Jack held his hands above his head, and Rapunzel slipped off his blue hoodie to throw behind her. They weren't sure where it landed. They didn't care. Rapunzel crashed her lips onto his. As their tongues battled one another for dominance, Jack maneuvered himself so that he was on top of her. She giggled uncontrollably as he ran his hands across her stomach, up and down her legs, anywhere they could reach. She was horribly ticklish, and Jack was using this to his full advantage. His lips twitched up in an amused smirk as her laughter escaped in between gasps. He thought things were going pretty nicely when Rapunzel suddenly broke away. Jack whimpered. The absence of her lips was almost painful. She took a moment to catch her breath. Jack closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. She was intoxicating. Everything about her totally overloading his senses. Opening his eyes, he saw Rapunzel looking up at him tentatively. She gave him a smile. It wasn't just a normal smile, though. There was deviousness in it, like she'd been told a dirty little secret. Jack cocked an eyebrow.
What are you thinking, Punz?
He asked. It was a strange feeling. He was extremely confused, and he almost found it arousing. Rapunzel's eyes sparked dangerously. She bit her bottom lip. It's just... She paused for a moment. Nice.
Nice?
Jack questioned.
Nice is good, right?
Rapunzel sighed. She reached up to kiss his neck gently at first. That idea was thrown out quickly. She sucked hard on his neck while she brought her hands down to caress his abdomen. Jack let a hoarse moan from his throat. Rapunzel congratulated herself on her victory. She released him and gazed back at him seductively. Nice is fine, Jack. She wrapped her legs around his pelvis and pulled him down onto her. He could feel her against his groin, earning yet another satisfied moan. I don't want nice. His mind went completely blank. His heart beat wildly inside his chest. His instincts took over. Almost unknowingly, he began undoing the bindings on her corset. She made no argument. Jack had it off of her in a matter of seconds. He remained silent, fully taking in her form. She was beautiful. If it had been anyone else, if she hadn't felt true love, Rapunzel would have wanted to cover up or hide. Not with Jack. She never wanted to hold anything back from him, nothing at all. Jack leaned down and kissed her lips hungrily. He trailed lingering kisses down her chin and further, stopping at the edge of her collarbone.
Not nice.
He repeated in his mind. He acted on impulse. Rapunzel felt a sharp yet content pain. Her back arched as she cried out in shock and pleasure. Jack was biting down on her collar, not hard, but hard enough. He bit and sucked and slid his tongue in between his teeth, tracing it across her skin. She groaned softly as her breathing got heavy. Jack, she whispered.
Shh.
He silenced her, gripping her shoulders. He turned her so that she was now lying on her stomach. Before Rapunzel could react, Jack directed his attack on her shoulder blades. He bit down fiercely, sliding his tongue left and right as he did so. Rapunzel shrieked in pain and moaned in pleasure. She felt a fire building and building inside of her. The pressure was more than she could bear. Jack! She wailed. He stopped his carnivorous kissing. He looked at her, slightly concerned, worried that he'd hurt her. He crawled off top of her, and she sat up to face him. Without warning, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him off of the bed. Jack was so stunned he didn't have any thought to protest. She spun him around and pushed him hard up against the vanity. Several small trinkets and things fell to the floor, but they were of zero importance to the two. Rapunzel gripped the hem of Jack's trousers furiously. I need you, Jack, she demanded. Now. Jack smiled. Seeing this fiery side of Rapunzel was so different, so inspiring. He quickly fiddled with the trousers and had them off in an instant. He watched her cheeks turn a bright red and took it as his opening to get back on offense. In one swift motion, he lifted her from the ground and placed her on the vanity. They stood there, silent for a moment. Jack looked into her eyes, looking for something that would tell him what to do next. She only nodded and softly placed her hands around his neck. He lined up his member with her entrance and slowly, but forcefully, slid it. Rapunzel's breath hitched in her throat. There was no real pain, just pure, unbridled love. Jack moaned as he felt her surround him. He pulled out lingeringly, only to plunge in again. After a few tries at this, he found a rhythm. It was slow and steady. Each time he went deeper than the last until Rapunzel felt like she was at her limit. Still, she wanted to push it. She felt his cold breath on her shoulder. He was so close. She began moving her hips in harmony to his. She felt the friction growing, throwing back her head and exhaling loudly. She released one of her hands from Jack's neck to support herself against the vanity. He noticed the accompaniment. The guardian smirked, taking it as a challenge waiting to be accepted. He increased his intensity, bringing himself in and out harder and faster. Rapunzel tried keeping up, but Jack was wearing down her endurance, and he knew it. Her air came out choppy as she struggled to remember how to breathe. Her heart was racing at the speed of light. Rapunzel felt warmth rising deep inside her, something she couldn't describe. Somehow in her mind, she knew Jack was feeling the same sensation. The vanity shook as the fierce rhythm continued. Jack let a small gasp escape his lips, the tension inside of him become almost impossible to contain. As if sensing his urgency, Rapunzel tightened her legs around him, pulling him impossibly closer to her one last time. They both cried out each other's names as all forms of sensation exploded between them. Rapunzel's body shook as the orgasm coursed through her body. Jack moaned not at all softly as he felt himself release inside of her, letting go of all passion and energy he'd been holding on to. With an elongated sigh, the two collapsed. Jack brought himself down to the wooden floor and Rapunzel lay on top of him. Their heartbeats filled their ears as each tried to relax their breathing. Neither spoke for a while. They simply processed everything that had just happened. Rapunzel rested her head in the crook of Jack's neck while he softly traced patterns in the small of her back with his thumb.
That was amazing,
they said in unison. Only silence passed between them after that, but they would not mind. Having each other there was satisfying, and after all that had happened, neither really had the energy to speak. The moonlight in the room was joined now by the slight presence of dawn. Jack sighed peacefully.
Still think I should go?
He asked sarcastically. He did not get an answer. Rapunzel had already fallen asleep in his arms. The guardian smiled, feeling his eyelids become heavy. He kissed her head and let his eyes close. Knowing that she'd be with him when he woke was all the comfort he needed as he drifted off to sleep.